By the beginning of 1977, Kiss were no longer just a rock band. They were becoming something much bigger. Lunchboxes, posters, belt buckles, costumes, radios, trading cards, everywhere you looked, Kiss was there. But behind the makeup, behind the fire and explosions, the band itself was changing too. The pressure was building, the touring never stopped, marriages were beginning to crack, and inside the band, tensions were slowly starting to surface. Yet in the first half of 1977, Kiss would also reach new creative heights, recording one of their most beloved albums and launching one of the most legendary comic books in rock history. This is the story of Kiss from January to June 1977. The year began with a major shift behind the scenes. On January 1st, 1977, the members of Kiss signed renegotiated contracts. Kiss had exploded beyond anyone's expectations in the previous year. Alive had turned them into stars, and Destroyer and Rock and Roll Over had cemented their dominance. But their original contracts hadn't been designed for a band this big. Manager Bill Aucoin pushed for new terms. The band members would receive more favourable financial arrangements, but the structure of the band remained tightly controlled. Aucoin still ran the empire, Casablanca Records founder Neil Bogart still drove the vision, and the band members themselves were expected to keep delivering. Tour, record, promote, repeat. The Kiss machine could never stop. And for Neil Bogart, this was exactly the plan. Bogart understood something most record executives didn't. Kiss wasn't just a band. They were characters, and characters could be marketed forever. And those characters were now well established. Drummer Peter Criss, also known as the Catman, who in 1976 had experimented briefly with blue makeup around the eyes, had now opted for the more permanent green. This would become more important as time went on.
It is time for Super Max Kinkle with what you've all been waiting for, his exclusive special report on Detroit's entertainment scene. And tonight, apparently, you've done what no one else has ever been able to do, get an interview with Kiss without the makeup.
Well, not quite, but I think it's the next best thing, because nobody has ever done this before. And they were really surprised when I came up with the, well, you'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Big group, though.
Yeah.
Big group.
Especially in this town.
Detroit has been known for decades as a motor city, putting the nation on wheels. In 1960, a man had a dream, a musical dream. With the help of Jeannie Bradford, they wrote a song. With the help of a young singer named Barrett Strong, they produced it in their candy store recording studio. And indeed, they made a lot of money. That song led to the now Berry Gordy Jr. empire, known as Motown.
But the Motown sound and era has come and gone. Detroit now is still ahead of its contemporaries, known as the Mecca for rock stars and concert attractions generally. A new breed of rock and roll returns tonight to Cobo Hall for 3 incredibly sold-out concerts. That new breed of rock and roll is called Kiss.
Kiss, much like Detroit's own Bob Seger, is from start to finish high-energy rock and roll. Unlike Seger, Kiss employs the extreme in the theatrics on stage, utilizing fire and smoke and bizarre costumes, and the ever-consistent, constant concealment of their true identities through the use of makeup that takes 2 hours to prepare for a show. But who is Kiss? We know the group is comprised of Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, Peter Criss, and Paul Stanley. But who are they personally? Why the makeup? And the question everybody wants to know the answer to.
How did you get the name Kiss?
Well, we were looking for a name that would be really accessible, a kind of name that would almost sound familiar to people. And we wanted a name that wouldn't limit us to just the United States. No matter where you go in the world, people are familiar with the word Kiss. And it's got a lot of different connotations. It's the first step in foreplay. It's also like the kiss of death. It's got a kind of multifaceted. It can be heavy. It can be very sweet.
How far is Kiss going?
Kiss is probably going to go as far as people are going to let us go. And we're really hard Kiss, man. We're going to do as much as we can do and as much as people are going to let us do. And the only reason we're up there on stage in the first place is that we're trying to entertain people. And without people, we're nobody.
120,000 fans will probably be waiting for you, and undoubtedly will see you when you're in Japan.
How do you react? Not only myself, but the whole group is really excited about going to Japan. From what I understand, it's going to be like the Beatles coming to America. They expect between 5,000 and 10,000 kids at the airport.
Peter Criss, drummer, and also singer, on one just beautiful song, in my opinion. It is so unorthodox of the trend that the group set, Kiss set, high energy rock and roll. And you come out with a song, Beth, which is just the most beautiful love ballad I've heard in a long time.
Beth, I hear you calling, but I can't come home right now. Me and the boys are playing, and we just can't find the sound. Just a few more hours.
How do you feel as a composer?
I don't feel I'm a composer. That's a big word. I feel like I'm a writer trying to be a better writer. That sounds nice. Writer. And composer's gigantic. I mean, I look like Burt Bacharach. That's composer. I don't put myself in that category.
One step further. Are there other songs like Beth locked away in your head?
I got a million of them.
Well, gentlemen, and I do mean that sincerely, you are unassuming, unpretentious, and very, very nice people. And I hope in one small way I have conveyed to the public the members and the men of KISS that I have gotten to meet. And if you cut me up one more time, I'm going to walk out the window. Oh, no.
Regarding Peter's song, Beth, I found out when having dinner with the guys later in the evening, Beth still remains in the imagination. KISS in the music industry is said to be sharing the popularity the Beatles enjoyed in 1964 on their first U.S. tour. Will they continue to grow and mature the likes we have seen with the Beatles? Time will tell. I know this. 3 sold-out concerts in Detroit, approximately 34,000 fans. Don't come easy. That's KISS tonight at Cobo.
Paul often would, and still does, shoot down ideas because he's more cautious. He tries to contain what we've got. Though I'm supposed to pick up the phone at all times and discuss new ideas with him, I often don't. I just plow straight ahead and do it. Whether it's Kiss My Ass toilet paper, or history books, or whatever, and later on, Paul and I have words with each other. They're never fatal disputes, though. They're spirited disagreements.
I went to the Starwood, which was a club in LA. There was a group of clubs that you could kind of do a circuit and go around to these different clubs and make a night of it. And I went out one night, actually with Lita Ford, and we went to Starwood, and she was more familiar with the bands who were playing that night. And there was a band that did Detroit Rock City, and they did a cool version of it. So I said to Gene, come on down, the next night. So he came with us, came with me. I don't know who else came, but Van Halen played, and weren't a handful of people there, but they were on fire. And Gene got up and left where we were and went and talked to them and took them in the studio.
I went backstage, went over to them, and introduced myself. I went right into business mode. I wanted to know their plans. They had a potential backer who was a yogurt manufacturer. I said, please do me a favor, don't do that. I'll fly you to New York. I'll produce your demo. I signed them to a contract. Immediately, I started to bring them around. In Los Angeles, we went into Village Recorders, and in New York City, I bought David Lee Roth some leather pants and belts and platform shoes. Then I produced their demo at Electric Lady Studios, 13 to 15 songs, most of which wound up on the first and second albums. Some of those were my arrangements. The next step was to try to convince Bill Aucoin and the rest of KISS to sign them. But the rest of the guys in the band were angry that I was turning my attention to other acts, and Bill Aucoin thought Roth looked too much like Black Oak, Arkansas. He didn't get it.
It was funny because I always thought of Gene as the one member of the band I could count on, and yet he still did secretive things like that. It was that old impulse of his, and he never felt the need to explain any of what I saw as sneaky or dishonest behavior.
I told Eddie Van Halen and the others that even though they were signed to me, I would try again after KISS toured. Within 2 or 3 months, Van Halen got interest from Warner Brothers. I said, "You go for it. I'll tear up the contract. Just go." Though this was the first time I got interested in a younger band, it was by no means the last. I would have plenty of other opportunities to work with groups starting their careers or to help remake the careers of older artists. Working with bands other than KISS was liberating in some respects because I could share everything I had learned about the record business. And often, naivete about the business is what does young bands in.
But while the band's career was exploding, their personal lives were becoming more difficult. The constant touring schedule was exhausting. For Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, the strain was especially heavy. Both were married, and both spent months away from home at a time. Ace's marriage to Jeanette Frehley was becoming increasingly strained. Peter's relationship with Lydia was also under pressure. The lifestyle of a rock band on the road, endless travel, late nights and constant chaos made maintaining normal family lives extremely difficult. And those pressures would only grow as the year continued.
At that time, misinformation about the band began to spread in the southern Bible Belt states, including a rumor that the name KISS stood for Knights in Satan's Service, and that the 4 of us were devil worshippers. Ironically, this rumor started as a result of an interview I gave in Circus magazine after our first album. In response to a question, I said that I sometimes wondered what human flesh tastes like. I never wanted to really find out, but I was curious intellectually. Later on, this comment seemed to ignite the whole idea that in some way KISS was aligned with devil worship. When I was asked whether I worshiped the devil, I simply refused to answer for a number of reasons. The first reason, of course, was that it was good press. Let people wonder. The second reason was my complete disregard for the people who were asking. The religious fanatics who were asking these questions didn't deserve the time of day. The uneducated always point to religious principles. Through the years, whenever religious fanatics accosted me, especially in the southern states, and quoted the Old Testament to me, I would quote them back chapter and verse. They didn't know that I had been a theology major in school. An idiot is an idiot, whether he quotes the Bible or not. Fueling the fire for the Satan-worshipping nonsense was my hand signal, which involved the pinky, the thumb, and the index finger. This started innocently enough during concerts. I'd hold the pick with my thumb and my 2 middle fingers. Some people mistakenly thought it was a gesture of some kind, so they started waving their index and pinky fingers toward me in return. The second part of the hand signal came from my love of Spider-Man. In the comics, he sometimes had his middle finger pressed against the inside of his palm. I copied that in an early photo, and the fundamentalists seized on it. In point of fact, the hand signal actually means I love you in sign language, though I didn't know that at the time. This hand signal, ironically enough, became a standard gesture for other heavy metal bands and their fans, and it has been in constant circulation ever since.
The band's popularity reached another milestone early in the year. Their surprise hit ballad Beth had become one of the biggest songs of 1976, and in early 1977 the song won a People's Choice Award for Favourite Song. But there was one problem. Peter Criss couldn't attend the ceremony. Instead, the award was accepted by someone close to him, his wife, Lydia Criss. Lydia walked on stage and accepted the award on Peter's behalf, thanking fans and acknowledging the band's massive success.
Well, you've never seen a Kiss like this one. Kiss is the name of a group. 4 unbelievable young musical performers whose albums and concert appearances have really been creating a musical revolution. They're playing in Chicago tonight, unfortunately, but they did want you to see them in action. So they filmed the concert performance of the song you young people out there chose as the top song of 1976. So here they are singing their hit song, Beth, the incredible Kiss.
That was a thrill for me. Standing on Madison Square Garden stage and seeing all the fans cheering for them. And also all the way in the back of the garden, somebody had a sign that says, "We love Lydia."
Wow.
and then another person had a sign that just said Beth, just Beth.
Cool.
And I thought that was, a thrill. And then probably my biggest thrill was accepting the People's Choice Award.
That was your big famous moment.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
We were actually in Detroit, and for some reason the People's Choice Award wants to tell you that you're going to win only because they want you to show up.
Yes.
So that's why, like, most of the people that accept their own awards, people that are there accept their own awards. They don't send somebody to accept it for them. But unfortunately, they only tell you 10 days before, or maybe 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
And Bill Aucoin came over to us with the paper from Army Archer, I think his name was. He ran the People's Choice Award, and he said, you're going to win the People's Choice Award. And I'm sitting at a table backstage in Detroit with Gene and Peter, and we said, what? We're going, what? And then they started talking. Then Gene goes, well, how are we going to do that? We're booked in Fargo, North Dakota. They said, and plus, how are we going to sit in the audience with the makeup on? Like, that's a little, uncomfortable. And I just, as a joke, I just said, I'll accept it. And Gene said, okay. And I freaked. He said, okay. Did I hear right? And I had 10 days to get hair, makeup, an outfit, and courage together.
Yes. I think the courage might have been the hardest thing.
I literally lost 10 pounds in 10 days because I was a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
And they say, TV puts 10 pounds on you. So I said, I have to lose 10 pounds. I would eat an egg a day. That was it. That's all I would eat was one egg.
Well, you looked great, and you just
and some protein powder. Like Slim Fast or something like that.
A kind of a melodious, mellifluous marvel of mirth, a miracle of magical merriment. Well, only one way. Just speak her name, ladies and gentlemen, Goldie Hawn.
Music. It's a reflection of the times we live in. Today's music is frenetic and dissonant and cacophonous, which sums it up for me perfectly. I don't know what those words mean, and I don't know what's going on in the world either. But I do know that I can personally identify with 3 favorite songs we heard here tonight. Muskrats and ducks are my favorite animals, and I once knew a girl named Beth at camp. The songs you young people, oh, is this for the young people? Chose as your favorites are Disco Duck, Muskrat Love, and Beth. And the winner is, oh boy, it's a tie. I have to read the first one first. Congratulations, Beth.
Obviously, Beth is my favorite song, not only because it's how Peter feels about me, but how every man feels when he's away from the woman he loves. Kiss is performing tonight, and they just want me to thank everyone for this great honor, and I want to personally thank KISS. I love you.
I should just mention that accepting for Beth was the Beth for whom the song was written, the wife of the drummer, Mrs. Peter Criss.
But the moment also hinted at something deeper. Peter was often away from home. The touring schedule was relentless, and the cracks in his and Ace's marriages were beginning to show.
Our lifestyle changed drastically after Destroyer, especially after the boost from Beth. I bought houses for both my parents, even though I hadn't seen my father since he left me as a child in Israel. Paul did likewise for his folks. But Ace and Peter lived at the edge. They bought many cars and lived in many houses. At one point, Ace built a home recording studio with poured concrete, then found he couldn't use it because his neighborhood wasn't zoned for it. Between them, they cracked up or crashed at least 10 cars. Mercedes, DeLoreans, you name it. The funniest one was Peter crashing in his garage. The fire department had to come in with the jaws of life to get him out of his car in his own garage. Another part of our lifestyle changed too. As I have said, we always had plenty of women on the road, but now we had the means to treat them like queens. And that caused problems in our personal relationships. There are some hilarious stories about Peter. I had a liaison with a girl, and then Peter fell for her. They saw each other for a little while, and then Peter brought her phone number back home. His wife was a jealous woman and was brighter than Peter. So he hid the phone number under the stereo. His wife was cleaning one day, and she actually lifted up the stereo and found the number. So she called up this girl and said, "Hello, this is Oregon Health Department. Are you so-and-so?" The woman said, "Yes, why are you calling me?" "Well, we just need to find out if you're familiar with a Peter Criscola, who is otherwise known as Peter Criss, drummer in KISS?" "Yes." "Well," Peter's wife said, "he may have the clap. We're trying to ascertain what period of time you may have had physical contact because you may need to get a checkup. Can you tell us the specifics?" At this, the woman came clean with the specifics. It was this time of night, in this Holiday Inn. "Thank you very much," Peter's wife said and hung up. When he came home, she had him pinned. "Peter, where were you at 7:30 at night on Monday? Were you with so-and-so?" She had him dead to rights.
In February, KISS made another unusual appearance, this time in a Marvel comic. They appeared in Howard the Duck. It might have seemed strange, the bizarre Marvel satire comic featuring a wisecracking duck interacting with the hottest rock band in America. But the collaboration was part of something much bigger.
In Howard the Duck number 12, Steve Gerber had written us into the storyline, which was amazing. He was a big fan.
Marvel Comics and KISS were preparing a massive project. A comic book unlike anything that had ever been released before. But first, they needed something from the band. Something very unusual. To promote the upcoming comic, Marvel and KISS came up with one of the most legendary publicity stunts in rock history. The band would literally become part of the comic book. In early 1977, all 4 members of KISS had their blood drawn. The blood was later to be mixed into red printing ink used for the upcoming KISS comic. It was outrageous, it was theatrical, and it was pure KISS. The message was simple. This wasn't just a comic book, this was KISS.
I always wanted a gold record, and I always wanted to play Madison Square Garden. I already had my gold album. On February 18th, 1977, we headlined our first show at the Garden, and it was sold out. It had been 4.5 years since I pulled up in front of the Garden in my cab to drop people off for Elvis's show. I had seen the Stones at Madison Square Garden, forged a ticket for that show, in fact. I'd seen George Harrison's concert for Bangladesh at the Garden. I'd slept outside Macy's in Queens to get tickets for that show. I'd seen Alice Cooper at the Garden. I'd seen Ringling Brothers Circus at the Garden. Madison Square Garden was synonymous with success on a large scale. Playing there was big stuff, really big stuff. I was so anxious before the show that I took half a Valium. The idea that I might be sluggish? No chance. The adrenaline high was so strong on a normal night, and this was homecoming in a sold-out Madison Square Garden. I probably could have taken several whole pills and still have gotten up on stage and then run a marathon in record time. Shows like this were still new. I wasn't yet used to the idea that we were this big. Standing on the diving board is usually scarier than taking the dive, and sure enough, once on stage, I felt exhilarated. That first wave of force coming from people screaming and lights coming on is very powerful. Having multitudes of people focused on you and sending you energy creates an undeniable wave of force. That might sound like some sort of New Age concept, but the feeling is staggering. The entire show carried incredible emotional weight, but by the second song, I was home. I knew my parents were in the audience and I couldn't help chuckling about it. Yep, that's my boy, the one in 8-inch heels and lipstick jerking off a guitar on stage. But I was proving something to them. They were wrong. This could be done, and I had done it. You see, I am special. And then a bottle came sailing out of the darkness and hit me in the head. I saw it at the last second and flinched just enough so it smacked into my head next to my eye instead of in my eye. The glass cut me. I bled for the rest of the show. In some ways, it was cool, but I also felt hurt, not physically, but hurt that somebody would do that, and yet at the same time, I knew it wasn't done maliciously. I'd seen the impulse before. Fans wanted to touch you in any way they could, and here was someone touching me with a bottle. Our road crew, as devoted as they were, found the guy and beat the crap out of him.
We sold out Madison Square Garden for 3 nights in a row. This was a big deal for us. When we were starting out, the 4 of us used to sit in our loft at 10 East 23rd Street and say that we had only 10 blocks to go to reach Madison Square Garden, which is on 33rd Street. And now, we were there.
In March, Kiss travelled somewhere that would become one of the most important territories of their career, Japan. And from the moment they arrived, it was clear something special was happening. Japanese fans greeted them like visiting royalty. Some journalists compared the reaction to Beatlemania. Crowds gathered everywhere they went. Fans lined the streets, and the band quickly realised that Japan might become one of their most loyal fan bases in the entire world. Shortly after arriving, the band held a press conference in Tokyo.
First time we went to Japan, it was rather unique because we had convinced Pan American Airways to give us a 747. Now you can imagine going to Kennedy Airport in New York and seeing your 747 waiting for you. It was renamed and painted the Clipper Kiss Special. Well, I mean, it was just unbelievable. And on top of it, we took all the press with us as well. So we had the Kiss group and all the management people, as well as a lot of press. We filled up the plane with press to take them to Japan. There were a lot of things that happened around that. There was also a freighter, an air freighter, another Pan American 707 that had to carry the Kiss stage. Now the group had been on tour and they had not seen this Kiss stage before because it was built and designed by Kenny Anderson, who was the head of our production department at O'Coin Management. And it was put on a freighter to be sent to Japan so that when they arrived at Japan, they would see it for the first time set up. Well, a little quirk that happened at the airport in upstate New York was the set turned out to be a lot heavier than we had expected. So when they loaded it on the plane, we had to make a decision. We either had to leave part of the set home, or we had to come up with another solution. Well, fortunately, the 2 pilots who flew it to Tokyo decided that they would fly the plane unpressurized and have to wear oxygen masks all the way to Tokyo so that the weight of the plane could handle the KISS set. Tokyo was kind of unique, unusual, obviously a completely different culture, but we had lots of fans there. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fans at the airport. And we didn't realize that we were going to have a little problem at the airport. We actually put all our makeup on the plane, on the KISS, the Clipper KISS special. And when we arrived, they walked out of the 747, and there was a wall of photographers from floor to ceiling. They had put up ladders and chairs and everything, and you just couldn't even get by them. And as we finally got by the photographers, the customs people came to us and said, who are these people? We said, well, they're KISS. Well, no, this doesn't look like what they look on their passport. And of course, we then had to go into a room and take off their makeup, which was really a hard job after just putting it back on again. And then they had to put it on once more to leave the terminal where there were thousands of kids waiting for them outside.
We had arranged to pass through customs and immigration in full makeup and gear. We had it all with us on the plane and got ready when we were within a few hours of landing. But we arrived late, and the official who was supposed to be there to smooth everything along had already left. Without him, we had to remove our makeup before they'd let us in the country. After they verified we were the people in our passport photos, we did the quickest makeup job we had ever done and then walked out to find thousands of fans waiting outside. It was pandemonium. Once we got into our cars, people swarmed over them like locusts. I got nervous and claustrophobic. "Smile," Gene said calmly through clenched teeth. We spent the next 2 weeks attending lavish parties and making regular visits to Japanese bathhouses. The bathhouses employed women who seemed to grow extra hands and limbs once your clothes were off. If I could do to myself what they did to me, I would never leave home. While in Japan, I met with executives from Hoshino Gakki, the makers of Ibanez guitars. We sat in a boardroom and I explained my views on the sonics and aesthetics of guitars, which led to my first signature model. Having my own guitars sold in music stores around the world was a milestone for me, and any musician.
When we finally emerged from the airport, there were about 5,000 Japanese fans outside. The Japanese promoter, Mr. Udo, had arranged to have duplicate cars, and most of the fans ran after the duplicates, while we snuck out the back and jumped into other cars. But enough of the fans figured it out and came after us. I really thought we were going to die. There were just so many people crushing us. They were on top of the cars. They could physically lift up the car. It was major KISS mania, like what you see in the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night, but bigger, because the cars were being rocked and rolled, and it wasn't just girls, but guys as well. We later learned that the Japanese fans felt a great kinship with us because of our makeup, which looked like kabuki theater makeup, but also like the Japanese superhero shows. In the same way that some of our early American fans were black, because they didn't see us as either white or black, the Japanese took to us because they didn't see us as American or Asian.
The room was packed with journalists and photographers. KISS, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley and Peter Criss sat in full makeup answering questions about their music, their image and their explosive stage show. Japanese reporters were fascinated. They wanted to know everything. Why the costumes? Why the fire? Why the blood? And the band leaned fully into the mystique. Gene played the villain, Paul played the rock star, Ace delivered his usual unpredictable humour, Peter remained the grounded presence. But even as the band projected unity, tensions beneath the surface were quietly growing.
Next thing, in order to start off this press conference, we would like to ask each one of you to give us a few words just to start off. Would you like to start, Peter? Please?
A few words? A few words.
Yeah. Is that it? Finished? Would you take it over, Ace, then?
I'd just like to say I'm very happy to be in Japan. So far, the country is very beautiful, and we're having a very good time, and we're looking forward to the concerts. Thank you.
Would you please, Gene?
I'll try not to be repetitious, but everybody in Japan's been tremendously nice to us. And from us to you, domo arigato.
Would you please, Paul?
It's amazing. We've just gotten here. The tour hasn't even begun yet. And already we're looking forward to the next tour. We're very excited to be here. And so far, this is way beyond our dreams. The Japanese people have much to be proud of.
We've never seen so many cameras. Amazing.
カメラがすんごいたくさんあるんで負けそうなんですけど。
This is like when the amplifiers blow up on stage.
アンプが爆発するみたいに火が入るような時ありますね。ちょっとそんな感じですから。
Pictures.
I just like to say Japan makes the best cameras.
And the best beer.
Yeah, it looks like every cameraman is so excited about it. We can never start the question and answers.
I don't think King Kong had as many pictures taken.
During their time in Japan, the band travelled to Kyoto for a special photo session. The images captured Kiss in a completely different setting. Traditional Japanese architecture, temples and gardens, and 4 American rock stars in full makeup. The contrast was striking. The photos would later become iconic images of the band's global expansion. The concerts themselves were incredible. Night after night, Kiss delivered their signature spectacle. Explosions, fire breathing, smoking guitars, levitation effects, blood spitting. The Japanese fans embraced it all. The band realised something important during these shows. Kiss wasn't just popular, they were becoming legendary.
During one of our off days in Japan, the band went to a nightclub where we were met by a gentleman who introduced himself as Gon. He was stout and powerful and could clearly take care of himself. We didn't speak Japanese, so we relied on our translators. We went over to our VIP section, and within seconds, girls started to line up and pass by us and giggle. The man next to me was of some importance, I could tell, because when he put a cigarette up to his mouth, 2 other men nearby immediately lit it for him. We exchanged pleasantries. I learned later that he might be from the Yakuza, the Japanese mob. One of the girls in the crowd reached out, and we shook hands. Gon broke off the contact, spit in her face, and raged at her in Japanese. She cried and ran off. The translator explained that Gon was merely doing what he thought was proper. He was there to protect us, and she was not worthy of touching me. This was clearly a completely different culture. At one point, I got up to go to the dance floor, and security men followed me. Most of the Japanese are smaller than Americans. A Japanese girl might be 5'2". One of the girls, a beauty about 5'8", made eye contact with me. I immediately went over and took her hand and pulled her toward the dance floor. She smiled. I told her I wanted to go back to the hotel, but the music was too loud. All she did was keep smiling. We got inside the hotel, and I tried conversation, and then it dawned on me that she couldn't speak a word of English. It didn't seem to matter, though. We didn't need to talk. The next day, one of our security guards told me she was a famous Japanese television star. Right before commercial breaks late at night, Japanese television would show a shot of a beautiful, naked girl smiling into the camera. When we got back to America, our press office showed me a press clipping from Japan. There she was, smiling her smile in front of countless members of the Japanese press. The translator explained that the title of the article was My Night of Passion with Gene Simmons. I didn't mind. I was actually quite flattered. She was gorgeous.
While Kiss were touring Japan, they appeared once again in Howard the Duck. Marvel was continuing to build excitement for the upcoming Kiss comic. The strange crossover between a surreal comic character and a rock band actually worked, because Kiss themselves felt like comic book characters. and soon they would become them permanently.
Kiss's Budokan concert was very successful, thousands and thousands of fans, and it was the first time that they were ever broadcast nationally by doing a television special directly from the Budokan.
In April, the band began preparing material for their next live album, Alive 2. The original Alive had changed everything for Kiss. It captured the raw energy of the band's stage show and helped launch them into superstardom. Now they wanted to do it again. Recording began during concerts in April. The goal was to capture the intensity of the band at the height of their popularity.
Japan wasn't just another country. It was more like another world. Within the country, we traveled by the bullet train, the fastest train in the world. The Japanese fans, and especially the girls, would follow us everywhere we went. They would giggle, give us presents, and break into hysterical crying fits in front of us. Peter brought Lydia, his wife, with him on the Japanese tour. So outside of work, we didn't see much of him.
Jeanette Fraley, what was she like to hang out with in Japan?
Jeanette was my sidekick. We would always go shopping. We had, believe it or not, they were so nice to us in Japan. They gave us a girl to take us around Japan. Her name was Yoko, believe it or not.
Yoko?
A little Japanese girl, really, really sweet. And she would take us shopping wherever we wanted to go. We wanted to go to a temple. She would take us to a temple. We wanted to go for tea. We went for tea. You know, she would take us wherever we wanted to go. And she traveled with us. She went from town to town with us. And she was our girl. So basically, and we also had Wally Meyrowitz's wife with us, Lori. She was, Wally was the guy that was in charge of booking Kiss, and from ATI Booking Agency. So he was our guy, and Jeff Franklin owned the company, but Wally was our guy. So he came to Japan with us, and so there was the three girls and then Yoko. So the four of us traveled. I think there's a picture of us in the book.
Yeah, there's lots of pictures of you and Jeanette and Yoko exploring Japan and having a good time. Yeah.
The guys weren't allowed to go out because they would have been stormed. We did go out with them once or twice to a very famous toy store. And believe it or not, I couldn't call Peter by his name.
No.
I had to call him George, which is his middle name.
That's right, Peter George Kraskula.
Yeah, and but the thing is, the fans knew because they're so tall compared to the Japanese people.
Exactly, and I mean, they don't look Japanese.
They don't look Japanese, right?
They could certainly wander through Detroit or Des Moines, Iowa,
right,
in 1975, and no one would know who they were. Probably.
Yeah, we used to go to the malls all the time. Yeah. In America, but in Japan it was a little harder.
Yeah, and everyone knew that Kiss were in town, so.
Right,
when
exactly.
you see these tall guys with long, dark, curly hair and big boots, yeah, you know it's them.
Of course, yeah, because they were aware. We did actually go to a flea market on the other side. It took us about an hour to get to it. The other side of Japan, and I remember we went in what was considered a limo, but it was like the size of our taxi cabs. So that's how small it was. But we got there. The guys went off to a World War II regalia store, and me and Jeanette shopped for little trinkets and souvenirs.
Around this time, Peter Criss made a special visit. He travelled to the Pearl Drum Factory. Pearl was manufacturing his signature drum kits, and Peter was extremely proud of the relationship. As the Catman of Kiss, his image had become iconic among young drummers. The visit symbolised something bigger. Each member of Kiss was becoming a brand of their own. Gene, Paul, Ace, Peter. Each character had fans. Each character had merchandise, and each character was becoming larger than life.
I guess Japan. I really like Japan. I think they really... If New York was a country, I'd say New York. But New York isn't a country. And if Detroit was a country, I'd say Detroit. But I got to say Japan. I really like the Orient. I love it over there. They really, really appreciate us, and they've showed me that so many ways. They still do. They're really honorable people in a lot of honorable ways, and there's not many honorable people around anymore, especially in my business. And yeah, Japan. That would be my favorite place.
After the last show, we flew back to Los Angeles. There, we learned we'd been named the top band in America by the Gallup poll over Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, and the Eagles, among others.
In spring 1977, the band entered Record Plant Studios in New York. Producer Eddie Kramer returned to work with them. Kramer had already worked with legends like Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin, as well as producing Kiss's breakthrough album, Alive. Now he was helping Kiss shape their next album, Love Gun.
We recorded the album at the Record Plant, another iconic New York studio. It was up near Times Square in what at the time wasn't a great neighborhood. When you entered the place at the ground level, the receptionist was sitting behind a glass window and had to buzz you in through a locked door. The window had shutters, and once through the locked door, you saw the reception area was separated from the hallway by another locked door. I can't tell you how many times I left the studio to take a break and walked into the receptionist's little office. She would close the shutters and lock the door and say, "Oh, Paul." I didn't fool myself into thinking I was the only one, but I was one. And it was terrific. Sure beat a coffee break.
Songwriting came from all corners of the band, though primarily from Gene and Paul, and the sessions would produce some of the most famous songs in the band's history. The album opens with I Stole Your Love, a fast, aggressive rocker written by Paul Stanley. The song set the tone immediately. Powerful riffs, driving rhythm, and Paul delivering one of his strongest vocal performances. It was a perfect opening track, and it would soon become a concert staple. Gene Simmons contributed Christine 16. The song had a playful, almost nostalgic vibe inspired by Gene's memories of teenage crushes. But its lyrics would later spark controversy. Still, at the time, the song became a major fan favorite.
Don't you make a guest keyboard appearance on Love Gun?
Yeah, Christine 16. Yeah, I play the piano. Because Gene said to me, "Hey man, play it like you're really stupid." Because I'm a classically trained pianist, so I had to sort of play like a bozo, you know.
Gene Simmons also delivered the gritty rocker Got Love for Sale. One of the most important songs on the album was Shock Me, because it marked a major milestone. It was the first Kiss song sung by Ace Frehley, and the song was inspired by a real incident.
It was pretty much inspired by an incident that happened in Lakeland, Florida in 1976, where I was electrocuted on stage and luckily survived. And it was a very shocking experience. It was the beginning of the show, and I was coming up the back of the amps. You know, we had a staircase in the back, and we had a staircase in the front. You know, it was like 4 stacks of Marshalls, and as I got to the top, I started descending on the railing, and it wasn't grounded properly, and I got zapped with 220 volts. You know, thank God I fell backwards instead of forwards, because I got to plunge 20 feet down and probably broke my head open. I was knocked out for a while. I had burns on my fingers, tips, but I guess my guardian angel was watching over me that night. I was backstage, they revived me, and I couldn't play. We were going to cancel the show, and kids started chanting my name, Ace, 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 you know, and all of a sudden, you know, everybody's going, "Come on, Ace, you can do it, you can do it." So I played the rest of the show, but I had no feeling in my right hand. You know, all screwed up. But, you know, the adrenaline took over at that point, and I never really talked about it before until tonight. So you guys are privileged. Rock and roll. History. Anyway, that's the story.
Encouraged by producer Eddie Kramer, Ace stepped up to the microphone himself. Sort of.
You'd, bring in a song or something, and then when we played on it together,
yeah,
we, sometimes there'd be a riff that would be added, but the original concept of the song, we were never in the same room.
Yeah, Gene never got credit for the breakdown section in Cold Gin that he wrote. Ba ba da 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 da. That's Gene, but he didn't want credit. He said, "Hey, she deserved it."
There's plenty of room for everybody, and we wanted to put together the band we only saw once, called the Beatles, where everybody's a star, everybody gets a chance to sing. When we first formed the band, we said, start writing songs for you to sing. And when he wrote Cold Jane, came, that's kind of cool. I don't drink or anything, but go ahead, sing that song. He goes, no, I don't want to sing. I just want to be the guitar player. You sing it. It took a while for to convince Ace to sing his own song. So one of the ways that he did it was to lie flat on his back in a studio, like a fucking.
That was no, that was shocking.
Yeah.
That was my first lead vocal at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Flat on his back, which has never happened before.
I was nervous, and I said to Eddie Kramer, lower the lights, and I'll sing it on my back, and the rest is history.
It was a huge moment for the band. For the first time, Ace's voice joined Gene, Paul and Peter's on a Kiss album. There was also Tomorrow and Tonight, a party anthem inspired by the spirit of rock celebration, and the title track Love Gun became one of Paul Stanley's defining songs. Paul has often described it as one of the best songs he ever wrote. Driven by a huge riff and explosive chorus, it perfectly captured the swagger of the band at their peak. It quickly became one of the most recognizable Kiss songs ever.
At the end of the time in LA, I flew to New York. The song Love Gun came to me in its entirety on the flight. Melody, lyrics, all the instrument parts, absolutely complete. It was amazing and rare for me. I stole the idea of a love gun from Albert King's version of The Hunter, which Zeppelin also nicked from for How Many More Times on their first album. By the time the plane landed, I was ready to record a demo. When I got to New York, I called a drummer I knew and went almost immediately to Electric Lady to record the song. By this point, I didn't need to do demos in less lavish studios. I could do them in top-end studios, and Electric Lady was my favorite. I used the same equipment and tape that other bands cut masters on. That worked out to be as much of a curse as a blessing. Sure, the demo sounded great, but with using quality studios for demos came the risk of demoitis. You get so locked into the version you record as a demo that you lose all flexibility when it comes time to record the track. You've worked out all the parts, and it's hard to erase them and let other people have creative input if they veer from the version you recorded on the demo. Then you're stuck recording a stiff version of the thing you already did. It robs the final recording of spontaneity. You're less open to suggestions for change because you already have a fully realized concept. Eventually, in the late 1980s, I stopped doing demos for all those reasons. The funny thing about Love Gun was that even though the album version was recorded as a facsimile of the demo, when we went to cut the album version, Peter couldn't play the kick drum pattern on the song. Once Peter cut the track, we had to bring in another drummer to play the extra kick drum beats Peter couldn't.
Hooligan is a standout track from Love Gun, written and sung by Peter Criss, showcasing his rough-edged, streetwise style. The song reflects Peter's upbringing in Brooklyn, capturing the attitude of a rebellious outsider with something to prove. Musically, it leans into a gritty, hard rock sound with a raw vocal delivery that contrasts with the more polished performances from Gene and Paul on the album. Hooligan also highlights Peter's desire to assert himself creatively within the band, as he often fought for more opportunities to sing and contribute songs. While it wasn't released as a major single, it became a fan favourite for its authenticity and for giving a voice to the Catman persona beyond the success of Beth. Almost Human is a dark, groove-driven track written by Gene Simmons that explores his fascination with primal instincts and mythology. The song's inspiration draws heavily from the 1942 horror film Cat People, which tells the story of a woman who transforms into a panther when overwhelmed by emotion. Gene channels that concept into a brooding, hypnotic song built around a steady, almost tribal rhythm, giving it a very different feel from the band's typical high-energy rockers. Lyrically, it fits perfectly with his demon persona, blurring the line between man and beast, and reflects his ongoing interest in horror themes and darker storytelling. Almost Human stands out on Love Gun as one of the album's moodier, most atmospheric tracks, adding depth to Kiss's otherwise explosive sound. Plastercaster is one of the most infamous and playful tracks on Love Gun. Written and sung by Gene Simmons, the song was inspired by a real person, Cynthia Plastercaster, a Chicago-based artist who became famous for creating plastercasts of rock musicians' genitals. Simmons met Cynthia in the early 1970s, and the encounter left a lasting impression, eventually turning into one of Kiss's most tongue-in-cheek songs. Musically, the track leans into a loose, almost bluesy groove compared to the heavier material on Love Gun, giving it a sleazy, late-night feel that matches its subject matter. Lyrically, it reflects Gene's larger-than-life demon persona, provocative, humorous, and deliberately outrageous, while also capturing the anything-goes atmosphere of the 1970s rock scene, where excess, mythology, and real-life characters like Cynthia blurred into legend. And then the final song on the album, Then She Kissed Me. A surprising cover sung by Paul Stanley. The original was called Then He Kissed Me by 60s soul group The Crystals. Stanley switched the gender point of view and included it on the album. This decision has divided Kiss fans ever since. But each track added another dimension to the album, and Eddie Kramer helped shape the sound into something powerful but polished.
After I finished this one, everything was all good and crazy. Now, I don't know anything about music. Well, I know Elton John and the Eagles and guys like that, all right? The Rolling Stones. But Kiss, I don't know men with red makeup, with 7-inch heels, spandex, and everything's really too tight. So I didn't think they were going to make it. So I just walked out with my check, and I was gone for about 2 years. And I had now you got to remember, there's no real communication in the world. So you don't know who's doing well and who's doing bad. I didn't know that went double platinum. That means millions of records were sold. Well, when I get back 2 years later, they decided they wanted me to do another cover. Well, I thought they were still the Backstreet Band that I had saw the first time. So I came in with a Backstreet cover. This is an alley with the group standing below a lit stage door light, and the groupies are around them. And
That's debauchery.
Yeah, total debauchery. And there's more debauchery in it than I thought there was, because some of it is actually just erasers, but they're in funny places. Because you got to understand, I'm a young married guy, and my wife is like, you ain't doing that, dude. Okay? So, now they told me, this is when I learned that Kiss was rich. I didn't know Kiss was rich a day before I walked in there, but when I walked into this major office, which was uptown, even further uptown, and instead of it being a little office, it was like grand. There was telephones in the bathroom, fresh flowers delivered every day, boardrooms. So, they didn't want this cover. I had to do much more. Ken, we're bigger, we're richer, we're just more grand, we're great. So I want, this is Gene, pillars and a big stage and girls, but not like this. They wanted this, so my wife and I had to go to the Village to get those little filthy magazines that have people dressed in this stuff, and brought it home. And then my wife had to pose. Well, my wife caught a cold, a really, really bad cold. Now, you remember, I have 30 days. She had to get out of bed, get up, go in the living room, and I had a 4x8 board on the couch to the floor to get those angles where they're leaning on steps. She hated my guts. She told me she'd never forgive me for this. She was dripping. She was just horribly sick. And I made her pose for all the girls, and then delivered it, finished it. And actually, I didn't finish it. I took so long to do this, maybe 31 days. They sent a truck with a driver out to Long Island with the house I bought from the other, good. So they sent a truck out, had the driver, they said, just go in the house, don't even tell them what it is. Go in the house, get the painting, put it in the truck, and bring it back to Manhattan. And that's what they did. And I was working on it. I was working on Peter's vest. This is a little incomplete here, and I wanted more detail. And the gentleman took this gigantic painting off my easel and walked out of the house. And I looked at my wife and I said, I guess we're done.
Behind the scenes, Sean Delaney continued to play a critical role. Delaney was part songwriter, part creative advisor, and part performance coach. He helped guide the band's stage presentation and songwriting structure. Delaney also worked closely with Paul Stanley on vocal arrangements and harmonies. His influence helped keep the band focused, especially during a time when personalities within Kiss were becoming more difficult to manage. While the band recorded Love Gun, the Kiss brand continued expanding everywhere. New products hit stores constantly. Kiss makeup kits, trading cards, posters. Kids across America were transforming their bedrooms into Kiss shrines. For many young fans, Kiss wasn't just music, it was a lifestyle. Finally, the moment arrived. Marvel released Marvel Comics Super Special Kiss. The comic featured the band as supernatural heroes battling evil forces. And yes, the printing ink contained actual blood from the band members. Marvel even filmed the blood mixing ceremony to prove it. The stunt became legendary. Fans loved it, and the comic sold millions of copies. Kiss had officially entered the world of superheroes.
A kiss, as defined by Dan Webster, is something pleasing, a caress, a gentle touch. But there's another kiss that isn't in Webster's.
You didn't die, my limousine.
Kiss, I'm told, is a big rock group on some level of music, appealing to that portion of the population that finds its collective voice changing and reads comic books. Speaking of which, Kiss is going to have its own comic book soon, featuring the four strangely attired and hairy fellows to be printed by Arcata Graphics, printed in, if you believe everything you're told, in real Kiss blood. To that end, Kiss flew into Buffalo today, yes, with a plane, a Brinks truck bringing a little white box, in which were, you guessed it, 4 vials of real Kiss blood, which were summarily dumped into some printing ink for the old comic book. Isn't that wonderful? The whole thing was a classic public relations stunt, one which may or may not have been in bad taste, depending on yours, one which may or may not sell comic books. It would be nice to think that people won't be sucked in by this type of thing, but then maybe Kiss knows something or reflects something about us that we don't see. Mike Hegedus, TV2 News Center.
A real classy act, guys. So I love publicity, and as long as it's based on something. One day we decided to do a book based on the rock group Kiss. I had met, no, that's great, I forget his name, the guy with the long tongue.
Gene Simmons.
Yeah, I had met Gene Simmons. In fact, we've become quite friendly. And I remember when they first started, he and Gene Stanley came up to my office, and they said, "What do you think of our costume?" And they had these boots with soles this thick that made them 6.5 feet tall. And I'm looking, I'm thinking, these guys are crazy. Shows what I knew. But anyway, we decided to do a comic book based on Kiss. And some publicity guy got the idea that they would go up to the printing plant where the books were printed, and each of the 4 members of Kiss would take a pin and just prick their finger and get a few drops of blood to come out and drop those drops of blood into the ink, into the red ink. I said, "You guys are out of your mind." He said, No, it's great. It'll get a lot of publicity. The idea being that every kid or everybody who bought a Kiss comic book in some way was getting a little bit of Kiss's blood in that comic book. That's brilliant. And sure enough, they chartered a plane. I went with them like an idiot. We flew up to Buffalo where the press was. And I'll never forget this. The city of Buffalo had been told that we were coming. And there were policemen stopping, 2 limousines were waiting. Policemen were at corners stopping traffic while we went to the printer And all I could think of was this traffic that was stopped. There's probably some doctor going to save a person's life. There's probably some guy going to his job, which is an important job. These people are being stopped while 5 morons, the 4 of them and me, are going to go and drop some blood in a printing plant. But anyway, we went there and they put their little blood in there and we drove back. And tell you one thing, Gene Simmons has a photographic memory. On the plane going and coming, he was telling me, he's apparently a big fan, he was telling me, Stan, do you remember that story you wrote in Spider-Man number 23, the 3rd panel on the 5th page, when he remembered I've never known literally a photographic memory. I was so impressed with him.
We had a comic book that came out from Marvel Comics where we were superheroes. I actually got a chance to beat up Dr. Doom, which was very important. And there's some panels in the comic book where I'm hanging out with the Human Torch and Captain America. I mean, how cool is that? And they're calling me Gene Simmons. I mean, that was the name I used in the comic book. That's as good as it gets.
In June 1977, Love Gun was finally released. It immediately became one of the band's biggest albums. Critics praised its energy, fans embraced its songs instantly. The album would eventually become one of the defining records of Kiss. Yet behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. The touring schedule was relentless. The business empire kept expanding. Personal tensions were growing. Ace and Peter in particular were beginning to feel the strain, and the next phase of 1977 would push the band harder than ever before. But the biggest moments of the year were still ahead. A massive tour, one of the most famous live albums in rock history. More merchandise than any band had ever seen, and the first real fractures inside the Kiss empire. In the second half of 1977, Kiss would reach their absolute peak, but they would also begin the slow path toward internal conflict. And the next chapter of the story would change the band forever.